Okay, hello everyone. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, warm welcome to Manchester Art Gallery. I'm just going to start and just give a little bit of context about the Fashion Gallery, and we'll take it from there. So we launched the Fashion Gallery in Manchester Art Gallery in 2022, so it's relatively new. And this happened after the closure of the Gallery of Costume, that some of you may remember, which happened in 2017 and is now currently being redeveloped. So this is the first permanent gallery that's dedicated to display of dress and fashion at Manchester Art Gallery, which is really quite exciting to be able to situate the collection and all the possibilities of it within the context of the wider collections at Manchester Art Gallery. Unpicking Couture, next door, was created in partnership with the University of Arts London, and it was funded by the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. So this research project, titled Exhibiting Fashion, aims to really develop a toolkit which will equip non-specialist curators and small to mid-sized museums to create innovative and engaging fashion displays, hopefully. So the exhibition features many pieces that were acquired from 2015 to 2018, which we acquired to a Collecting Cultures grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and also includes key garments from the collection. So the displays present a contemporary interpretation of couture clothing, exploring design codes, sustainability in wear, courage and creativity, identity and self-expression. So we feel it's so important that exhibitions of dress really do include multiple perspectives and expanded narratives. And one way to explore this is through collaboration. So we were really grateful to have worked with Stitched Up, with Zenza Tinker Conservation, the National Saturday Club, Jackie Haynes, Dr. Cheddar Gorgeous, and of course, Manchester Fashion Institute. So we hope to create relevant and inclusive exhibitions and exploratory spaces that enable multiple ways to connect and to learn. We really want to thank Gavin Douglas for initiating this critical programme of 3 panel talks exploring the intersection of fashion and disability, fashion and race, and fashion and sexuality. So we hope to contribute in a small way to the future of fashion by supporting young people who are starting out in their careers, encouraging them to be ambitious and to be informed, and we are open to learning and better understanding how we can best use collections and gallery spaces now and in the future to support this. So we've recently launched a new film in Unpicking Couture with Manchester Fashion final year BA Fashion Design and Technology students who've created work in response to the themes of the garments on display. So they've creatively explored wider concepts around the fashion of our future. So I wanted to say huge congratulations to Amani Ahmed, Liam Richardson, Jessie Tan, Sophia Bruckner, who feature in the film talking about their inspiration, their process, and their vision. So now I'm going to pass on. And I think you do, yeah, you'll do a good job.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi everybody. How are we feeling? You guys look good.
Thank you.
Good. Good. I feel like this is a really good kind of like follow-up to all of the Met Gala commotion that I've been seeing, all the looks and everything. So I'm excited to talk about it today. Really excited. But yeah, thank you for joining today's panel, where we'll be discussing equity, diversity, and inclusion within the context of fashion and race. It's good to see some familiar faces. I'm Julian Randall, a fashion writer and PhD student at the Manchester Fashion Institute. Our research generally is on Black men and their clothes. So I'm looking at how and why Black men consume luxury fashion in America in particular. Although anyone who's undertaken any kind of research knows that your project is kind of constantly evolving, so it could be different a year from now. But given that my own work sits at the nexus of fashion and race, I was pretty excited when Gavin asked me to speak today, because I think that fashion and race is a really pertinent topic to luxury, especially in recent years. And so recently, I had the opportunity to visit the Texas Fashion Collection in my hometown of Dallas, Texas. And when I got there, the first thing that I had kind of asked the archive director to let me see was something by Patrick Kelly. Kelly, who was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, is the first American and Black designer to be admitted into the governing body of the French fashion industry. Some of his clients were people like Donna, Cicely Tyson, even Gloria Steinem, among others. But before she showed me any of the garments, she ensured that I knew that they were intentionally trying to diversify their collections. And I felt that Patrick Kelly was a good start. So naturally, when viewing the Unpicking Couture exhibition, or if I'm completely honest, before I even viewed it, I wanted to see how racially diverse it was. So viewing works by Roy Kawakubo and Missy Miyake and Bruce Oldfield was a real joy, although not for my own viewing pleasure. Some of us in this room, especially the ones on the panel and the ones that we'll return to tomorrow morning, may know the contributions that racially diverse designers have made to the luxury sector. But a more casual viewer may not. Their interactions with high fashion may occur at Selfridges or by seeing images of Cardi B service on Instagram, and often the products on the racks and the shelves, and even on the bodies of diverse people tends to be white European. Enter the fashion exhibition, which has the ability to expand what we understand of luxury fashion, and also to be effective and culturally mindful stewards of the histories and artistic legacies that will be on display in the exhibition, which could lead someone to eventually and hopefully learning about Patrick Kelly, or even about Kirby John Raymond of Pierre Moss, who actually debuted his first couture collection in fall 2021 as the first Black American designer invited to show as part of the official couture calendar. So I expect that today's talk will bring all of this together, the past and the present, the other identities that race touches, and the often chaotic role that fashion tends to play in all of this. But more importantly, I hope that it encourages more conversation and reflection afterwards. And now I'll hand it over to Gavin.
Thank you, Julian. That's going to be a bit of a tough follow-up a tough speech to follow. I have made some notes, but I want to kind of spend more time talking to the panel rather than just, kind of going over some of the topics that you said. What I do resonate with, though, within what you said is how, when you went to the Texas exhibition, the first thing you asked for was the Patrick Kelly garments. And it was a similar experience that I actually had here when the curators of Unpicking Couture were putting the work together for this exhibition. We were talking about who was going to be represented, how would race be represented within that exhibition. So I'm really pleased that you came, and it's funny that you say, you're wondering how racially diverse it would be, and that you came and you saw that representation within the exhibition, because I think, one thing we do as people is when we're looking, and experiencing and exploring the world, we tend to do it through our own critical lenses. So we look for that sense of belonging, seeing what, we're hoping to see ourselves within exhibitions, within our education, within our workplaces, and it's something that we do naturally. So I'm going to read a little bit from what I've written today, hoping that this ringing goes, and do I need to come closer? So just to put this exhibition and also the discussion today into context, it's been organised to provide a platform that will communicate a comprehensive understanding and an accessible account of the true lived experiences and links between high-end fashion and race. As you'll note from Julian's address, although black and brown people do have similar experiences of race, the intersection of nationality can also provide a variable perspective. It's often mythologized that the contribution of black and brown British people to the British fashion industry commenced sometime in or around 1948, along with the arrival of the SS Windrush Empire, with women taken on positions as seamstresses and dressmakers. This well-documented period of history often cements the opinion that the black and brown British experience is a relatively recent event. Although this period presents the largest wave of black and brown workforce migration from the Caribbean and India to Britain, as well as a new generation of black and brown British youth who introduced their own identities through clothing via their love of music and style, is widely been appropriated within the UK. So I'm hoping that what we can do today within the panel is listen to the lived experiences of our experts, hope to see the exhibition and their work experiences through their lens. So we've put a series of questions together. There will be a moment of opportunity for questions towards the end, so I'm hoping that you'll have a think about what you can put towards them. do challenge them. They are here and very experienced. So we'll start with the questioning just now. So on the panel today we have Amani Ahmed. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. Amani Ahmed, who is an advocate for championing equity, diversity and inclusion within fashion, particularly in navigating the world of fashion through the lens of a practicing Muslim woman. A perspective that needs to be heard, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experiences, particularly as a Manchester Fashion Institute student, someone who's about to graduate and go into the industry. We also have Asiya Durrani, who's sitting here on my left. Asiya Durrani-McCann, yeah, who has a fashion career that spans over 25 years within the international luxury and fashion marketing industry. She has led international teams as a brand manager, director, collaborator, buyer and consultant, and leads educational and industry projects and platforms, including 90 from the 90s, the Fashion Industry Forum, and also Auntie Agency. We also have Sharon Lloyd, second on my left. Thank you, Sharon, who is a senior academic, change maker and beauty futurist. Through exploring and challenging the relationship between race, makeup and the body image, she has collaborated on exhibitions and research projects identifying representations of beauty, size, age and ethnicity formulated by the media and fashion industry. Sharon is a co-founder and co-chair of Fashion Academics Creating Equality, also known as FACE, which I'm also a member of. We have Xavier Marchan, who is the head of business development at one of the UK's largest and leading modern heritage brands. He has 10 years of menswear buying experience across also being a buyer manager and head of buying levels in multi-branded and single-brand environments, and manages collaborations of territory growth and works with the merchandising and design teams on trend forecast and brand management. So you also have some handouts on your sheets that have more information about their roles and who they are and what they do. So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for all taking the time out to visit and join us today on the panel. I'm going to start with the questions. I'll start with Asiya first, as you're closest to me. Can you just briefly tell us a little about who you are, your career background, and how you've arrived today?
Yeah, long career, and lied, it's a lot more than 25 years.
Okay.
Got good ponytail in. So I, born in Bradford, I always say, brought up in Brixton and did a little bit of finishing school in Paris. Went to do my degree in '88 at Greenwich University in business, because my family wasn't going to let me do fashion in those days. I'm looking at Muslim families over there. Didn't allow it in those days. Wasn't going to. I mean, I was a failure already, I would say to people, because I wasn't a doctor. So that's what my background was. My background as a family. So yeah, did business, love fashion. I grew up in the post-punk era, new romantics, heavily influenced by all of that, and wanted to keep it going. I did a dissertation while I was at university on the changes from the 80s to the 90s advertising in fashion, because I was sitting in that era when I was graduating, and I wrote a handwritten letter to Vivian Westwood, and I said, can I interview you? She posted it, no emails, no mobile phones, and she wrote back, and I interviewed her. And I interviewed her and realised advertising at that time was a really sexy subject, you know. It's the AI of the moment in those days, and realised that financially the company wasn't at that stage. Went to work in the city. 9 months in, I came home to my home phone, and there was Vivian on my home phone saying, don't know if you remember me, it's Vivian, would you like to help me at the show time? And all I did, I immediately made a decision in my life to give up the route I'd been given, which was in business. I was working at Lloyd's in the city. I'd graduated, had a very good job. And I thought, this is my moment to enter fashion. Fashion was a very different space then. Luxury was a very different space. And I couldn't even think of being in couture, which I do work in now, and haute couture, which I look after clients in haute couture as well. So yes, I went to work for completely free, I worked 4 other jobs through the evenings and weekends to sustain myself, nightclubs, cleaning litter off the floor in Hyde Park, Pavarotti concerts, anything to sustain myself. And after the 3 months, got a job, permanent job. I got myself a niche. I worked in the accounts department. I was the only person that wanted to do invoices. Invoices generated money. I made money for the company. I knew what letters of credit were. And I learned how to work with international companies like Barney's, Bergdorf Goodman, Gnatiuk. Entered an era where licensing was big. Licensing was the beginning of what collaborations are today, and collaborated with many companies. 24 in Japan, I was looking after licenses. That licenses contract allowed 20% of our sales to go towards marketing, which allowed us to have greater shows in the 90s. For Vivienne Westwood, allowed me to launch the first and be head of advertising for Vivienne Westwood, and I became head of licensing. Went on after 10 years of that to work on various different businesses, including I befriended Alexander McQueen was a friend of mine. I worked on his shows. I became sales and marketing director of Ericsson Beeman. We made jewellery for shows such as Dior, Givenchy, Ongaro. Did all the circuits. New York Fashion Week, Milan, Paris, London, Tokyo, Basel. I launched into the world of diamonds. Diamonds by Ericsson Beeman, which was quite a hype time. I worked in that for 7 years.
So very established career.
We've already got to the 2000s.
Yeah, is there anything that you've not done or experienced within fashion?
No, I've done buying after that. I've been buying for 12 years at a store here called Xavier. Co-buying, I consult them.
Yeah.
I do that, so there you go.
Just going back, what you mentioned was when you wanted to go to university and study fashion and the arts, that your family weren't necessarily extremely supportive of that. How did you navigate that, and what was that experience like, particularly at that time? Did you go into higher education with lots of people who looked like you or had similar life experiences? What was that like?
Yeah, nobody looked like me. Even though it was a business studies degree. Navigating, it wasn't so much they didn't stop me, my family, I just didn't want to disappoint them.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of Asian people, Muslim children, I'd say, or even black kids, they want to disappoint the family. They've struggled so much to get here and establish themselves here, that that's the one guilt that you live with, of disappointment. So,
would you say that kind of made you more determined to work harder and excel and achieve within your career?
Yeah, it did when I got in. I thought, right, because now I've dropped business, and well, I didn't really, because I continued in business and fashion, but I'm not working at Lloyd's in the city anymore. I'm really going to have to aim for the top.
Yeah.
Determination was everything, yeah. So, took a very unusual route, you know.
But managed to
I
excel and
had to
achieve
give everything.
Yeah.
I didn't get married till, when did I get married? I always forget, but 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't get married, didn't have kids. If you got off the track in the 90s and 2000s as a woman, there would be at least 5,500 people waiting to get your position.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
So very competitive as well.
Yeah, very competitive.
Yeah.
You have to give your whole life to it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the same question to Sharon. So, in terms of your career experiences and also education, what was that like? How have you arrived to the incredible, amazing person that you are now? Particularly leading FACE. So, if you tell us a little about FACE within that as well.
All right, so I started as, I'm also a South London girl, so I did textiles at Chelsea School of Art, and then I was a textile designer for 12 years, and then I had a random opportunity by one of my agents to go and work in New York, which I did, and then I came back, and I don't want to bore you with the why I came back, but suffice to say that I ended up studying all those years ago, because I am a woman of that age. They didn't do degrees in textiles, and so I did an HND in it, and so I wanted to top that up and do a degree. And I went to Winchester School of Art, loved it, and then, because I was a couture student, they suggested that I stay on to do the masters, and I stayed on to do that. I ended up all the time, I will say, throughout all of that, I was still a textile designer. But then the bottom fell out of the market. So literally, I remember being in Paris and at one of the shows, and my designs were going for they started at £350 in the 90s.
Fantastic.
And literally within 2 years, you couldn't sell them for £50.
Oh, really?
I mean, that was the state of the market in the late 90s. And then I decided, well, actually, I'm a certain age. Do I still want to be a textile designer? And so I am good at writing, so I started teaching. Started teaching textiles, and then I started teaching, because it was fashion textiles, I pivoted and I started teaching fashion theory. So suffice to say, I've gone on into education, and I was a course leader, and I ended up being a course leader of a very, very large makeup and hair degree course.
Which was it the first of its kind, or one of the
in the country, which was really exciting. But I loved it. I still do. But throughout all of that, there was still this idea: is this enough? Am I giving my students enough? Are they exposed to enough? And I think that idea of not enough comes from the fact that because I was working in not just in London for a long time, but I worked in New York and I worked in Paris, and I just saw that you could just walk down the road and be absorbed in culture. And I was in a space where they weren't getting that naturally. And so it was down to me to feed them that culture and that knowingness that we all want and aspire to for our students when we're in education. And part of that knowingness was partly me wanting to see me, or a version of me, in my classroom. And I always used to say to my students, actually, I'm training you to go out into the industry, but I'm not training you for me, I'm training you for the little girl that wants to be where you are today. That's really important. So, come 2020, throughout 2020, lots of very key, very important discussions around the face, the body, identity, the death of George Floyd, and then a group of fashion academics started to migrate together, and we became what's known as FACE today, which has been really interesting. I will say, alongside all of that, I got swept up into the British Beauty Council, so I'm also one of the co-chairs there. I'm a very busy woman. So I think what I'm trying to say is that actually, when we are thinking about
Bluetooth disconnected.
That wasn't it.
No, your phone is disconnected.
No. When we think about the exhibition that's outside these walls, actually we are thinking about inculcating everybody. This is a shared experience that what we're talking about when we talk about race equity. And it's really important because there's a difference between race equity and race equality. So we want this idea of, there's a bigger discussion that I've been having with lots of teams of people about decentering race, decentering the space. And what it means is that when you move established notions of identity and clothing and body and beauty, if you move that to one side, what happens is that you let other people in. And that's where it becomes really exciting, and you get reverberations in the room. And that's the space that I occupy today.
Excellent. That's really interesting. Just before you move on, Sharon, you spoke about decentering the space. Can you talk a little bit more about, we've got a lot of students here, those I can see a lot from FDT, the program that I lead at MFI. How do you see that, or how do you do that within a fashion context, within the classroom? How do you decenter the space within fashion or fashion design?
Well,
are there any examples that you're able to provide?
Okay. I'm a very generic, it's not an example, my generic notion of decentering that space is by letting go of what is known today. And I'm saying that really carefully because I teach fashion theory. okay? But it's about allowing other voices to come in and own that space and have a presence in our design sensibility. And it's so hard for me because I was fed, not in a lie, but I was fed on this other truth of the classic couturiers to aspire to be like. And they are still wonderful in my eyes. It's just that I'm also cognizant that there are others that are just as wonderful and just as exciting, if only we allow them to occupy the space and critique them in exactly the same way we've spent the last 50, 60 years critiquing couturiers and the renowned designers.
Excellent, thank you for that response. Amani, I'm going to ask you a similar question. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, how you've arrived here today, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question as well.
Hi everyone. My story isn't as exciting as these guys. I'm a final year fashion design student studying at Manchester Fashion Institute, and I think I'm really excited to be here. The reason for it is I think it's about time that the industry hears the perspective of what it's like to navigate the industry, the fashion industry in particular, through the lens of a Muslim woman. I'm sick and tired of being in rooms where I'm the only one that looks like me, because there's only so much you can take. Like, I'm really confident in myself and my beliefs and my religion, and no one can take that away from me, but I think there's certain conversation that I don't want to be having, because just because you aren't unaware, just because you're not aware of how I live my life, you can't project that on me. So I'm just really happy to be here just to have that conversation and just to bring a light onto a different perspective, I guess.
Excellent, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Just about talking about occupying space and also your experience as a Muslim woman. You know, you've taught me a lot within the short time that we've known each other, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, I really wanted you here today. So again, thank you for coming. What are some of the things that you may have experienced as a Muslim woman that have made you maybe feel othered or maybe not comfortable within spaces that you'd be able to share with us today?
I think it's not that anyone's directly said anything to make me feel uncomfortable. I think sometimes just going into a room where no one looks like you just says a lot about a brand especially, and I do get certain questions here and there about how I live my life and what I wear, and I think it's 2024, like it's on you to research and do your due diligence rather than come in to directly ask me, because at the end of the day, I just want to do my work and do my design work without thinking about, oh my God, like, what are they thinking about me and what I wear and how I live my life. So it's not necessarily anyone said it directly. It's just, I think it's a feeling that only ethnic minorities will understand. Just feeling like the odd one out and just feeling like you're stepping on eggshells because you just can't be yourself because no one gets you. Yeah.
Earlier, Sharon spoke about decentering spaces, particularly within higher education. What is your experience like being in higher education? Do you feel as though your experience as a Muslim woman has been represented within that? Do you think more could be done? If so, how? What would you like to see? What changes would you like to see?
I mean, I'm the only person that looks like me in my course, and it's really because I grew up in such, I'm from Sheffield, so there's a predominantly large Muslim community over there. A lot of Asians and Arabs, and then to come into a fashion school where pretty much no one looks like me was a bit of a culture shock for me. But I think growing up, I don't let that get to me. I just sort of work hard and just let my work speak for itself. But you can't help but question why is that case. And I haven't felt supported, I haven't felt represented at all. But in my final year, I do have to say, my peers, my friends at uni have been my rock.
Yeah.
And without them, I don't think I would have enjoyed it and had the experience. So it's been through my actual friends rather than through academics, to be fair.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to students who are like you, who may be considering or coming into education, higher education at that?
It's quite scary because I often get asked the question of what's the solution. I don't know what the solution is to a problem that I didn't create.
Okay.
So if we start from there.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, you have to be strong and you have to be disciplined, but I'm not naive either. Like, no one's told me this is what you're going to face. I've just had to go with the flow and just deal with the rejections that come along with it. So it's been very ambiguous, my experience in general, but I just think you just have to block it out and just keep going. And it can be quite tough, it can be quite difficult when there's no one around you to support you, because all the opportunities that have come my way, I've had to literally go out and find it. I didn't have a mentor growing up. Growing up in Sheffield, studying fashion was just not the thing.
Yeah.
Still till now, I don't feel like there's a sense of commitment over there, but my family have literally said, do what you want, just be good at it. So I've got that support system from my friends and family, but everyone else around me, I don't feel it, no.
Okay, that's excellent. Great to hear, and thank you for sharing that with us as well. Last but not least, at the end of the table, we have Xavier. So
Hello.
Just asking you the same question, if you just tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and background as well, and how you've arrived at where you are today.
So my name's Al. I'm the head of business development at Bellstaff at the moment. So a long time ago now, so in 2006, I started studying at university. I studied human geography and anthropology, which was like fascinating, but not at all anything to do with what I'm doing now. So my second year of university, I actually studied abroad. So I went to University of Miami in Florida, which is just as fun as it sounds. And I met my now wife there, who is from Japan. And when I came back from Miami and I finished my degree in human geography, I was going to be a diplomat, and I decided that I actually like clothes instead. So I got a job in a department store. I was working on a Paul Smith jeans section on the weekend. And this was in 2008, so there was a financial crisis, so there were no jobs for graduates. So during the week, I was working in the stockroom, pricing things. And then I was going to Japan to visit my then girlfriend, now wife, and I said to the buyer at the time, "Oh, I'm going to Japan, I know Paul Smith is being in Japan.
Yeah.
Can you hook me up with someone there?" And the next thing I know, I got an email from the head of Paul Smith Japan, who was saying, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you can have an internship." And I think they thought I was one of Paul's friends or something like that. So I had to explain that I was just a kid that worked on the Paul Smith jeans section on the weekend. So I went to Tokyo, and that was just a mind-blowing experience. It really showed me what else there is to fashion than to just working on the floor or not on the weekend. I got to spend some time in the showroom. I worked in a store called Paul Smith Space, which is like a concept store in Tokyo, which has like an art gallery on the third floor and a roof garden and stuff. And I made some lifelong connections and friendships there. So after that, I decided I really want to pursue fashion as a career. So I got an opportunity at the department store I was working at. They said, "Oh, there's an opportunity in the buying office for a BAA. Do you want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, I can use a computer, like, let's go." So that then led me to become an assistant buyer, and then to become a buyer, and then to become a buying manager, which is a lovely job which took me all over the world, sort of buying clothes. I bought every brand from like Fred Perry up to like Stone Island and Burberry, across multiple categories. So in my sort of 10 plus years in the buying world, I've been lucky to travel to many places: Florence, Paris, New York, even Japan. So, and that led me to my current job at Bellstaff, where moving on the other side of the table from working for a multi-brand, working for a brand. So the reason I went to Bellstaff is because they really needed someone to head up the business development side, like a territory growth. So we want to grow the territories, collaborations, which are obviously so endemic right now. And I also work with the design team on trend and forecasting, seeing like what's next and sort of what's up next. So yeah, that's how I got here. Yeah.
Great, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing that with us as well. I want to move into the exhibition now, and also looking at it through your own critical lenses, and also the context of couture, luxury fashions. The first question I want to ask to you, Asiya. So, what contribution have Black and brown people made to the global couture, luxury fashion industry? And who are your standout designers as well?
This is the only question I looked at, Gavin.
That's fine. So it's free flow. It's free flow then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, before we even go further, it's so important to me that we all in this room are very clear the differences between luxury, couture, and haute couture. Okay, very clear. If you're entering the industry of fashion or want to come into this world, please try and understand those differences. Yeah, because the world of luxury has changed greatly, I'd say, Julian. massively recently, and you think about streetwear and where it came from and everything. I mean, I'm so happy that you've mentioned Patrick. You know, so prominent. But so there's luxury, and that's maybe if you haven't been, if they're very young and you're entering university, you go to Selfridges down the road here, you'll see some luxury products. With it, for me, who's been in the industry a long time, they even categorise. They come under very commercial luxury as well. Then there's couture, which is created specifically, garment made for a specific human being, designed by a student. But that isn't haute couture. Haute couture is a region of Paris with a capacity of staff who work in certain parameters of work to make an item happen, a beautiful item happen. And people, so couture, when I'm talking about couture and the importance of, let's say, people of colour, black and brown people. Firstly, famously, I don't know if many of you know here, but it was an Englishman that made couture happen in Paris.
Charles Worth.
There you go. I don't know if a lot of people know that. Charles Worth, Englishman, went to Paris and created a phenomenon called couture in 1856. Okay, at that time, I would say there are not many people of black and brown background in Paris. Okay, not the immigration started much later, when the authorities were, thank God, leaving where they shouldn't be. So if you think about that, I mean, there's a lady that really came to my mind, and people don't remember her either. She's called Elizabeth Keckley.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Keckley was a slave for Virginia. She's from, and she bought herself out of slavery, not until 1860. And she went on to have incredible seamstress talents, so much so that she made the President's, Abraham Lincoln's wife's clothing for her. People don't know about her, and that's 1860. So these dates are quite important. People don't look that far back when they start looking about the presence of black, brown, people of colour in couture. Then we have Anne Lowe, genius, woman, amazing. First black woman to have a store on Madison Avenue. Also, she was the woman that made Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress. Never given credit for it, ever. People don't know it. So when we're trying, and she came, of course, she was around the 50s. So these paving stones, everyone always likes to talk about, I would love to talk about Virgil, but you know, it's easy to talk about somebody when they passed away, and I did love him the whole time he was around. But things started moving a lot. So those are the people I admire, people that broke the mould a long time ago, and women.
Yeah, those are excellent examples, and to be honest, they're not examples that I would have expected you to say. And I am aware of those designers and kind of the path that they kind of made with their innovations and work and techniques, which is fantastic to hear. You spoke, and this is going to Sharon now, you spoke a little bit about decentering. Do you think there's enough of that within fashion education, that kind of diverse perspective of designers who have created couture, produced these beautiful garments? Do you think that's included within higher education, within the fashion curriculum enough now?
No.
No?
Is the answer.
Yeah.
I think that we are it's very difficult because we are beginning to take a step back. We're only now starting to take a step back and appreciate the richness of the diversity of input into the fashion industry that we have today. And recognising that actually, when we think about whether there are enough black and brown designers, actually let's not think about those designers, let's think about all the other teams, all the other people in the industry. Because when we think about fashion, we're just thinking about
design.
We're thinking about, 100 key figures in reality. But what we're not talking about are all those other people that are out there supporting them. So we've got the seamstresses, we've got the cutters, we've got the design teams, the graphics, all of that. Where are they? And I think that we also, when we talk about fashion, we need to talk about it in its entirety. Because I think it's too easy to just name check those that turned up at the Met Gala. I'm just thinking, well, where are the black designers? It's not enough. because we need to see that there's so much more to it than that. And I think that
seamstresses is really important. I think it's something. When I went to Vivian Westwood, I remember whenever the shows would happen, about 20 women would turn up a month before the shows, and they would come into the studio and start working with Vivian on all the pieces for the show. And these women were all Caribbean black women. And we've talked about this before, Gavin.
Yeah.
They came with skill sets to England of seamstress work that only the top people in London wanted them in their studios, and we had them. You know, and they lived in their studio basically for a month, and they'd finish the garments at the very last second. I think looking at the broader perspective, look at embroidery today. Most of the embroidery you see at the couture houses are done in Pakistan, India, and brought over. You know, yesterday or Monday, sorry, was the first time we had an Indian designer present at the Met. First time ever. You know, these are. It's like we have had only starting to unpack, and pick these amazing people that have been there forever. You know, I worked in diamond industry. Sorry to say something earlier, but diamond industry. When you work with people like Cartier, you realise how much wealth was sold to the Indian Raj, to Cartiers. They were their biggest clients. They also replicated a lot of their work and have been considered, a lot of the stones were lost in Cartier and emerged as Sotheby's maybe 60 years later and so forth. But, you know, our people were bringing things forward a lot longer than 1858. And we still bring things forward.
So I just want to say that on top of all of that, what we have are there are black and brown designers, it's just that they don't maintain their industry presence. And I think that's the lack of financial support is key, actually, when we talk about why there aren't enough black and brown designers out there. I thought what was so interesting, and I don't know how many of you saw the Missing Thread exhibition at Somerset House last year, but actually what's so interesting is that there was all these key designers and influencers, and you look around and you just think, where are they now? It's because they cannot. And I spoke to there were 3 or 4 designers that were featured in the exhibition, and I actually spoke to one of them at length, and he said that actually once he left the brand that he was working with, and I won't say which one it is, but once he left there, he couldn't get another job. Because he was the only black designer touting his wares back in the UK. It was impossible.
I'm going to take, that's a really interesting point. I'm just going to take that point over to Xavier about finance as a buyer who has, you know, a huge amount of experience with regards to buying within the industry. Sharon, you've mentioned that one of the challenges for black brand designers is maintaining their brands and themselves within the industry. Xavier, are you able to provide any advice or guidance from your own experience in terms of how people of colour who tend to, you know, do suffer systemic challenges within the industry? One of the things I know that for a person of colour, when they're trying to get a loan, they tend to get higher interest rates than white people, and that's a known fact. So that's one of the first barriers that they'll immediately come up against if they're trying to start a new brand as a black or brand designer. What advice can you give, given your own experience within the industry, with regards to how finance can be managed in order to keep a brand sustainable?
Yeah, I think if you're going at it from my expertise is buying and merchandising function of a store or a brand. Naturally, when you're trying to break into that sort of side of the industry, at the entry level, the pay is not very good. So you have to be creative in how you sort of sustain yourself. So, you know, I know younger people who have said, you know, there's sometimes you may have to work for free if you want to get some experience. So, you know, when I used to see younger people who were keen on the shop floor, I was like, look, if you could come into the office and get some support on top of everything else you're doing, that is a good way to break into it, because it's hard to break in without any experience, but obviously you can't, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you can't get the job, so it's just like, you need to take that time to invest your time into internships or whatever it may be. And I think it comes quite naturally if you're a student graduating university who you kind of spent the last few years living quite frugally, possibly. When you are at that level, like the admin assistant, MBA, it takes a while to get to. It's only when you really get to the sort of assistant wire level that it starts to become you can live a sort of more sustainable lifestyle. So I would say just see the light at the end of the tunnel if you are breaking into a sort of buying function where, like at the very entry level, it doesn't sort of it can be quite tough financially. But just be assured that if you continue on that path, it will come good eventually. And I think it's just being aware of that, because I know a lot of people who have come in at that level, been very keen, but from all sorts of backgrounds, but obviously because it doesn't pay as well, they've moved on to other things. It's like the actual transparency of that progression path it's not quite clear, and no one really says that to you because it's not really depending on who you're working for.
Yeah.
You're just in there, you're there, and you're doing it. So as someone who, when I'm looking at someone in that position, if I see that they're keen and they're passionate about coding,
you're just going to support them and give them.
And when I tell them, you know what, you can, like, I had a girl who was working the shop floor. I was a buyer, and someone made a pass. I think we were wearing the same sort of type of shirt or something. And she said, "Oh, I can never be like a buyer." And then I took her to one side and I said, "What you said earlier?" I said, "Do you really believe that?" She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You said you can never be a buyer. Do you really believe that?" She said, "Oh, well, yeah." And I said, "What do you think I was doing a few years ago?" And so there is a path here, but it's just not as clear. And even when I was in that position and I was talking to the buyer, I was like, how are you doing this? Like, I really didn't know. So I think that transparency is key to show people like the path in my industry, in my world. That path is clear. It needs to be, I think, clearly laid down. In terms of, the financial aspect. It's like I've seen a lot of people younger then say, you know what, I'm going on a different career path now because they're following money, because they need to sustain themselves.
So what I'm hearing from that is kind of a combination of resilience and also having a good support system and mentorship around you in order to give you guidance in order to achieve. Just on that point, Amani, you're about to have this conversation earlier. You're in the final year of your degree. You've been working hard on creating a final major project from the design process all the way through to completing it. So you're at an incredible stage where you're about to launch yourself into the wider global fashion industry. In terms of your experiences as a Muslim woman and as a designer who is Muslim, are there any parts of your own lived experiences that inform the way that you design or that you've incorporated into your design process?
No, and the reason why I tend to stay away from designing stuff related to my culture and heritage because I just don't want to box myself. I don't want to be just the Muslim designer that just designs Muslim attire. I love avant-garde and conceptual design, and even growing up, to be a Muslim woman and within my community, if I set the scene, a lot of people in my community expect me to design kaftans and just stuff related like that, and that's just not me, that's just not my style. So I intentionally go out, I make sure that I don't sort of do anything related to my culture and heritage, because of course it means the world to me, that is who I am, but my work is completely different, and I'm just being authentic. That's all I'm doing. I'm just being authentic to myself and just designing what I like on my accord, and I think that's just as valid, because I don't want to be that token girl that gets these opportunities just because she's doing cultural stuff. I don't want to do that. I don't want to box myself. I want to just embrace as many just sort of inspirations and designs as possible. So I definitely intentionally just avoid it at all costs.
Excellent. So in saying that, who would you say that you target your garments and your design to? Who would you say are your ideal customers and clients?
So for me, I think Victor and Rolf are just my biggest inspirations. And the reason being is, so I've had a bit of a story growing up. I did really well in school, always wanted to do fashion, but I did very well academically, so I went down the route of just doing sciences, as you do in a Muslim household and just a Muslim community. Realised, you know what, that is not actually what I want to do, so I ended up doing my A-levels and continuing with my creative side doing photography and textiles as well. And I was very anti-uni. I didn't want to come to uni at all. I didn't want to be in debt. That is literally the honest truth. I didn't want to be in debt, and I just didn't know how to navigate being at university as a Muslim woman. I just had no mentorship, no one to guide me on how to do it. So I took 2 years out, and I was just working part-time. And I went to New York on holiday, and I went to the Fit Museum. There's an exhibition, it was the power dressing exhibition. I think that's when my epiphany happened. I was just walking around and I was like, this is actually what I want to do. I need to actually believe in myself, because I didn't have any confidence in my work. And as a perfectionist with imposter syndrome, even now it is a bit of a struggle. So yeah, I had my epiphany. I thought, you know what, it's about time. So I took a few years out to just build. For example, my part-time job gave me such character development to just be confident in my work. And I think if I went to uni straight away after 18, I would not be in the position that I am now. I've got a completely different mindset. So yeah, it's been a long ride, and now that I'm about to graduate, I'm mortified. I don't know what I mean. Yeah, I'm really scared. Yeah, I really am, because I've had experience in the industry with placement year, and I've learned so much, but I think EDI is just so important to me. I want to work in a team where I feel represented and seen, and I think for me, the reality check that I got was last semester. One of our units is where I did my research project, and long-winded title, but I researched the underrepresentation of Muslim women in fashion higher education institutions, so like fashion schools, and the effect of that on their career opportunities, and just interviewing Muslim students that are currently like students and graduates. It was just really sad to hear their stories, and I could relate to that, because if I wasn't the researcher, I would have been the respondent that said exactly the same as them. So for me, I think it just was a wake-up call, and like I said, I just don't want to be feeling like that anymore.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have someone like you with those experiences to come and talk about those experiences, so that we can learn from them and make impact for change. So I've read that. It's a fantastic thesis. I'm not sure if it's available to everyone else to read, but I learned so much from reading that as well. Just building on that, looking through the exhibition in terms of the garments and what's on display. Julian mentioned earlier that there's great representation in terms of designers of colour. Looking at them and when they were at their kind of foremost platform and doing, excelling and at the forefront of their career. We're probably looking, some of them still are, but I've kind of got Bruce Oldfield in mind. We're going back a few decades then. I often think about some of the challenges, that these designers may face during that period. To contextualise that in terms of challenges and barriers that are experienced today by fashion designers, I want to put this question to Sharon. What challenges do you think may present themselves to minoritised communities in terms of establishing themselves in the world of either high-end fashion, luxury, or couture? So what challenges or barriers do you think they may face today?
It's so different. Sorry, I'm so sorry. The first barrier is getting over those preconceptions the moment you walk in through the door. Actually, I'm going to lie. No, that's a lie. And I'm just going to be honest, it's only because I sat there on race equality charters and I looked through the figures and I spoke to people and I looked at the interview figures. The first barrier, I have to say, so many people get knocked out of that interview process just because of their name.
Yeah.
Just because of their name. How do you get over that barrier when it's your name? It's not your education, it's not who you know, it's your name.
And this is less and less to get over because of algorithms, because of AI, and the way that profiles and CVs and so forth are analysed. It goes through, therefore that name comes up immediately. It's not going to stop you, and it shouldn't stop anyone from proceeding. And your name is who you are. It's who you are. Hold on to it. But I'm saying that actually you have to work
10 times as hard to get through that and get in front of someone to say, let me show you what I can do.
Yeah.
Part of that, I'm just going
Yeah.
to say, is also making sure that you get out there. It's not just a while, we were talking in the car about cold calling and sending emails and contacting people. It's not just what you do, it's who you know. And it's as simple as that. And I learned that lesson when I was living in Paris, and I name dropped left, right and centre. And if I didn't, there's no way I'd have met half those designers. It just wouldn't have happened.
Just touching on that point, that's, there's some really interesting points that you raised there. Just going back to the name, there isn't much someone can do about their name other than change it.
Yeah.
So in terms of looking at this from a wider perspective, looking at society, what can we do? How do we change that? What do you think? And I'm not expecting the solution to come directly from you now, but what developments can we see within society in order to break that barrier down? Does there need to be more education, awareness?
Well, of course there needs to be more education and awareness, and it has to come from the top. And I think we're so busy trying to employ creatives from the ground up, and actually we need to like snap someone up that's already there and helicopter someone like you even higher, so that you can go in and do that diversity hiring. We're talking about it and we're talking about it and talking about it, and I'm sat on so many panels now, and I'm really bored of it. Where I just think, are we waiting in line, waiting for our chance here? So now I think we need to be much more proactive and make sure that we have people at the top, and then work down. I think diversity hiring is such a dirty term these days, but actually we all know that without that focus on diversity hiring, we wouldn't have such clangers out there within the media. I mean, just awful clangers within advertising, within social media. I mean, it just goes on and on. Wouldn't happen if there were black people in the room. Half these accidents wouldn't occur.
That's a great point. I'm going to take that point over to Xavier. Just in terms of your own role, you're in quite a senior role. I'm assuming that part of that may or may not include employing people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you do kind of consciously to ensure that that you have a diverse team, that different cultures and lived experiences are represented in the teams that you have?
Yeah, I think if I go back to sort of my experience of working in the menswear industry, it has been overwhelmingly positive in terms of a lot of people I work with are creatives, and a lot of creatives tend to be just in different cultural lens in terms of willingness to be into cross-cultural things. However, that can also mean that there's a danger there of being like, oh well, if I work in the creative industry, I'm open to everyone, kind of overlook some of the challenges that someone else might have. So I think for me, in terms of hiring, obviously, exactly to your point, Sharon, as someone of a diverse background myself, I know what it's like to be in that position. So I know what diversity can bring to the team, and just having me in that process, I think is beneficial. Where I've seen examples where I've had people work with me who have then gone on to interview somewhere else. And if they're a person of a certain type and they said, oh, I've got an interview at this place. And I know this person, I said, don't worry, you're going to get a job. I know you're going to get a job. Excuse me. And then he came back and said, oh, I got that job. I was like, yeah, I knew you would. Because of the certain type of person they are, the sort of person that this company sort of looks for. So I think, to answer your original question, I think, it's exactly what Sharon said about having diversity at that level, at the hiring level, so you can understand the benefits of having a diverse team and what that brings to your brand or your company.
So essentially having people of colour within that decision-making process.
Yeah, because otherwise it's hard to relate to my original point of the menswear industry at large. Most 99% of people people I work with are very open. They're very into like very different cultures. I can relate to them about things about my culture.
Mm.
But at the same time, unless you've lived it, you can't really understand it. So yeah, I think it's just about having it at the top and then filtering down, and it will take time.
Yeah.
It will take generations for these things to become not necessarily normalised, but it's not not unusual. Because I find that interesting example is my wife is Japanese, so my son is he's really mixed up. So my wife's actually half American, half Japanese. So we figured out that he has in his background he has every continent apart from Australasia in his background. And one of the things he likes, he's into Spider-Man, obviously all kids into Spider-Man. But there's a new Spider-Man who's his dad's African American, his mum Hispanic, and he loves it. And he sees that this is why representation is important, because he sees that on the TV, and he looks at what he has at home. He's like, yeah, it's exactly what I have at home. And then his friends also see that, and they come over to our house, and it's not strange to see that representation. So making a roundabout point here, but it's all about representation across the board, where it's you become part of the process instead of an afterthought.
Yeah.
It's the point.
A really good point there. Yeah.
It's not just about representation though. It is about, we talked about the Wednesday centering, it's been quite prominent tonight, but actually what it does, it opens up opportunity for everybody.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I don't understand, that when people don't get it. You have this amazing sort of conglomerate of people and ideas. Why wouldn't you want that within your business? Why wouldn't you want it?
Yeah. So kind of diversifying the workforce creates better opportunity for all, more ideas, more creativity, more openness. Just following from that point as well, I'm going to ask you, Asiya, the next question, just in terms of the consumer. So as a buyer within the luxury fashion industry, what role do consumers play in advocating and supporting EDI within the fashion industry? What can they do to ensure that the fashion industry is actually further diverse?
I think the word is desire. The desire comes from the consumer. As a buyer, as well as Xavier, you don't buy, you don't think, the job of buying is great, go shopping all day in Paris. No, you don't go shopping for yourself. You're buying for a market, an audience. It's not you most of the time, and it's so that desire, creating that desire for representation from the consumer is more and more a push, which is what we've seen since 2000. We have the likes, Virgil we brought up, Olivier. I always say it because I still admire him, Kanye West, Rihanna, to an extent, to a very more commercial level. These people, it's those names that the young and the disposable income, your market, want you to bring to the table. I brought brands in because of the demand. That's what you were asked to bring in. Wales Bonner is my colleague there, who also does buying with me. Wales Bonner we brought in because the market wanted it, didn't they? It's not like we thought, we'll go out of the way and go. Well, your market start desiring it.
Absolutely.
A collab happens with Adidas, with Wales Bonner. That's the product you want. You might not be able to all afford the original Wales Bonner because it's a little bit overpriced as far as I'm concerned, but you buy the Adidas.
Yeah, absolutely, and
So having different entry points and products that are open to a wider range of.
You can see that every day. You're on Instagram. You see that the audience. Look at the people at the Met on Monday. The majority of people in the greatest outfits were of black and brown background. It's changing. That's changed. That vision, that visualization on Instagram and everything creates a demand from the consumer.
Yeah. Okay.
And just to add to your points, as a buyer, you don't. I've always said if I bought what I like, we'd be out of business because.
Yeah, you do the right for yourself.
That's not what's going to sell. And mentioning conversion, I think that's so important from a consumer's point of view. I think it's kind of goes hand in hand with the consumer and the brand, because there's a Steve Jobs quote that says something like, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. nowadays consumers are going more and more savvy, and I think just consumers being aware of the history. Like you mentioned Virgil, obviously Virgil, that's such a great moment because not a lot of people who are into the time now would know that, you know, Dapper Dan from New York City in the 90s, they were doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Lots of streetwear and incorporating luxury into streetwear in their own way because the luxury brands weren't doing it then, all of a sudden now they want to do it. So it's just being aware of how we've arrived at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely can personally say whatever you think about these strategic moves. Pharrell, okay, Louis Vuitton, with their strategic moves there. But even that, whatever you say negatively about it, it is having an impact. It will be remembered historically of making an impact, you know. Hood by Air, I can never remember the guy's surname, Shane Oliver or something like that. But, you know, again, that's a demand that's coming from the street for that brand, you know, and that change, I don't care what these people do there half the time, just their presence is the change.
That demand from the street, there's a theory that we often teach within fashion education, bubble up, trickle down.
Yeah.
So it talks about whether, you know, is it the street that's inspiring the brand, or is it the brand that's inspiring the street? So where does the inspiration start? It's like the chicken and the egg. So what is your perception on that? Is it this what's happening on the street that informs high-end fashion, or is it the other way down?
I have seen a lot of street. We were talking about it earlier. I worked with John Galliano in the 90s, hung out with him, and he lived in Notting Hill, hung out in Brixton. That collection he did in 2002, where he took references from, it was specifically from Brixton Market, okay? And people talk about appropriation when that collection came out. A lot of Rasta colours in that collection. But he didn't, you know, firstly and foremostly, John himself is an immigrant family in England. He grew up as an immigrant in this country, Spanish. People forget that. John grew up with a lot of mixed kids around him all the time because he was from an immigrant family, you know. If he wanted to appropriate completely, and I'll throw this at you because it's up for you to take it or leave it or disagree, he would have gone straight to Jamaica and totally appropriated if he wanted. But he didn't. He went to the street of Brixton to see in the market what the street girls were doing with their hair, with their bags, with their pants, and he brought that. And he was replicating streetwear at that point. So yes, I've seen that happen, which is beautiful, I'd say, and it happens still today. And then you see other extremes where it comes the other way around. And
well, I'm thinking about not so much fashion, but I'm just thinking about the latest Marchan show with Pat McGrath. And of course, Pat McGrath, the most amazing makeup. It's not an artist, designer. Because there is a difference within makeup between being an artist and a designer. She's the most amazing designer / visionary, and to have come up with, to sort of worked with him on the story. I mean, it took a year in the making to come up with the whole thing.
And she was working with him in the early 90s. People like to talk about Pat now, but Pat's been working with him. Yeah. Jeremy's been doing the music since whenever house music came out. You know, these little teams of people. People always ask, how did you?
You see it going the other way around.
Yeah.
It is. It's, you know, that effect does go from
one
top down. And what we're going to see, I mean, that show is going to have reverberations for the next 2-3 years. Well, I know that because I'm sat in the WGSN panel. But it's going to have reverberations in how we look at skin, how we look at hair, how we stand, how we take photographs of ourselves. That's just one element, never mind the clothes. So I think that, you know, that trickle up, trickle down, we're still seeing it.
But I think the other thing is beautiful that you said earlier was that took a year in the making, together, collaborating that look. And I think that's another thing I really have to say to young people, and you talked about it, it's the time. Please give yourself time.
As designers,
absolutely.
as thinkers.
going back to the appropriation in terms of what your thoughts, and your considerations of that. Excuse me. You mentioned that you work quite closely with John, particularly when he was doing that collection. Appropriation, in terms of my experience, is someone kind of taking from a culture and not necessarily respecting it or understanding it or giving back to that culture. In what ways did John, you mentioned that he went down to Brixton and he was inspired and he used that inspiration from, black and brown people within Brixton. Would you say that he really understood that culture?
Yeah, because he was in that culture.
He was of the culture,
He was hanging out in that culture. He
Yeah.
was growing up in that culture. I know people that were still friends with him for a long time afterwards. So no, I think John was part of that culture. Like I say, I was brought up in Brixton. I left Bradford when I was 18, and I was brought up in Brixton for the next 25 years, I feel more South East London than I do when I left Bradford, which was like so long ago. So he was as much as part of that scene as anybody else. There are others at which I agree that do appropriate, but I don't think that particular moment. There's times when the street does resonate what is really happening.
Good point. Thank you. Just moving on quickly to Amani. What message do you have, just in terms of your own experience? You've been at MFI for 4 years now, you're about to graduate. What message do you have for anyone who wants to understand more about the importance of diversity? You're an advocate for Muslim women, particularly within higher education, and soon within the global fashion industry. So just to repeat that question again, what message do you have for anyone who wants to understand more about the importance of diversity from your experience within higher education and social environments?
I think you need to be open-minded to have honest discussions. I think that's where change happens. Like I said, get the question asked of what's the solution. We need to talk about it first. We need to actually address it at hand, what's going on. And that's how you move forward. But I think for me, it's just that openness and just the academics and the tutors really need to do their research as well. Because like I said, I'm pretty much an open book. I'm more than happy to answer questions. And I appreciate when people are inquisitive, but it's about how you ask a question as well, just so you don't come across quite offensive. So you need to word it carefully and be inquisitive, but you also need to do your own research as well. And the thing is I'm a Muslim woman, but I'm also my own person. I'm speaking from my experience. And you can have a room full of Muslim women in the fashion industry and everyone's still different. So there's still a lot of nuances, a lot of intersectionalities, and I think academics and tutors within higher education, they need to be very culturally aware and just be more culturally sensitive as well to topics as well. So just understand that not all students do the same things, and we don't all experience the same things as well. Everyone's really different, so you just have to approach it from that angle.
Excellent, great response, thanks. I'm going to ask about accountability because you kind of mentioned within your comment, and don't worry, this question isn't directed at you. I'll open it to anyone who wants to respond. But I'm going to talk a bit about accountability. You spoke about lecturers, people who may work in higher education, or looking at it from an industry perspective. Who is accountable for this change? Where does this change need to come from? We've spoken about the experiences of underrepresented people who are marginalised, not necessarily feeling a sense of belonging within various spaces. How does this happen, and who's accountable to ensure that this change goes ahead? I'm going to ask this to Sharon, because I can see you're deep in thoughts.
Yeah, I'm always deep in thoughts. Always. So who's accountable? We are all accountable because there are minoritized young and older people within this space, but there are also allies, and we're always looking for allies, which is really, really important. And I'm not saying we're always going to get it right. We're human. However, at least we're having the conversation, and you've got to be in the room to have the conversation, which is really important. And I think, I'm just listening to you, and I'm thinking, the thing I want to have to say to all the lovely students that are in the room is that actually, while I might be saying it's that there are potential barriers out there, equally, this is a really exciting time to be entering the industry, because there are people out there that are going to be advocating for you. There are people out there that are going to be looking out for you, that are going to be thinking of you, that are be wondering how you're getting on, and thinking about where you now need to go next to get on and up. So that's really important to remember. What you need to do is to have that confidence to speak out and say, I'm here. Because unless you do that, I can't see you, and I can't grab you, and I can't put you in front of someone and say, she's amazing, he's amazing, they're amazing. You need to speak to them.
Just to add to that as well, I think, because I've been in rooms where I've literally been the only person that looks like me and I'm over it, I think for me, and even with other students as well, you don't necessarily have to be in the fashion industry, whatever industry you go into. I think I'm going to start doing it where when I start applying to jobs, I'm going to bring up the conversation of EDI within the recruitment process and in the interview. It might feel like they're being cornered, but for me, I'd rather know what I'm getting myself into. And maybe even if you do succeed with the interview, ask for a trial shift. See what the office is like where you're going.
Yeah,
Get a vibe of the people there, their ethos, just so you kind of have an understanding before you really say yes to something. So you need a lot of confidence and courage for that, and it's quite scary. And I haven't done it before, but I will. And
that's a great point, and going on to Sharon's point in taking accountability in terms of recognising and realising the spaces that you're entering as well, and also going on from Sharon's point that it is an exciting time. Although there are barriers, there are lots of things happening within the industry. I'm going to ask this question to Xavier. In terms of your own career and your career trajectory and experiences, what are you most proud of? What's been your most exciting moment and best achievement to date?
I think it's kind of like, there's a bit of a full circle moment for me where when I was in Japan and I was in a room with the head of Portsmouth Japan, who was in charge of the licensing of Portsmouth in Japan. I'm just a shop floor person at this point, I'm not a company that paid. And then to me going to Japan in March, sitting in a boardroom with one of the top licensees in Japan to negotiate deals to bring British brand to Japan, that's kind of probably something I'm most proud of, because that's like I said, so.
Yeah, and can you tell me how much the deal was worth? Or
I can't do that. I can't do that. But it's for me, it just signifies, I think, if you see something and you believe it and you're truly passionate about it, you can get there. It can seem impossible at the time, especially when you're sort of starting out. It's like, how am I going to keep going with this? But if you keep doing good work, it will come.
Yeah.
And if you believe in what you're doing, that's the cream always rises to the top. And it's a cliche. Sharon mentioned it's who you know. It's a cliche, but it's just so true. It's absolutely so true.
It's a lot of networking as well within the industry.
No matter who it is that you've met, whether they're in the same course as you, or you never know when you're going to cross paths with someone again, where they may end up. So it can be easy to, depending on the sort of person you are, to sort of not be into that world. But it's part of, if that's something you're not akin to doing, is to networking. See it as a challenge of how to relate yourself.
To facing your fears or maybe areas that you're not as confident
absolutely,
in as well.
Because when you do that, things happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of situations I've been in have been it's a combination of sort of preparation and opportunity, where you have the experience, but then you also take that step yourself. I'm going to take advantage of this. So that's a recent example for me. There's been a few others, but that's probably
great example, great advice as well. Amani, same question to you. What has been your best achievement today? What are you most proud of?
Not really want to brag.
Go on.
No, I'm not going to either, to be fair. So I'm really excited. I think for me it's quite more personal. I think the fact that I'm graduating soon is a big moment for me. I'm the first woman in my family to go to uni, so it's a big deal for all of us. And I think to even get to this point, me at 18 being lost and having no idea what I wanted to do, to have that resilience and that strength to keep going, because it's so easy to quit.
Yeah.
Quitting is really, really easy, especially in this industry. You hear no's more than you hear yeses, and there's so many barriers. But I think for me to just, the fact that I've kept going, and I've created opportunities for myself, I'm just proud of myself. Don't really say that quite often, but I think I need to start saying that more. But yeah, I'm just proud that I'm at a point where I've stuck to what I believe, and I'm just ready to go into the industry. Actually, something that come back to me and say, you know what, you're ready, you've got it.
Excellent, and well done.
Thank you.
Sharon, same question to you. So, most proudest achievement to date? Just one.
Okay, just the one, and it's a recent one.
Yeah.
I've just signed my first book deal.
Oh, fantastic, excellent. And what is that about?
It's about black beauty.
Black?
It's all about black beauty.
Black
in the
beauty?
20th century.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And when will that be published? When will we be able to get a copy of that?
Books and publishing, it will be 1996.
2026, yeah.
2026 when it comes out, so yeah, by the time I finish writing.
Excellent, and that's a great achievement.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think actually thinking about the journeys we've all taken to get through education, get into the industry, get through the industry, and have this bigger perspective, and look and be able to look back. That's an achievement. I'm still here.
Yeah.
Right? I'm still here. And I think about my peers when I was at Chelsea School of Art, and I would never have imagined myself still sat here. And when I think about who else is still working within fashion, the fashion industry and now beauty industry for myself, like, no, they're not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm still here, and so that's an achievement at 60 years of age.
Well done.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Asiya, same question to you. Your proudest moment, biggest achievement?
You know, the truth is, they don't stop. That's what you've got to think about. If you start, it's ridiculous. We can't reel them off because it's just. Don't ever think they stop. And I do remember my first achievement, which was going to the first show for Vivienne Westwood about 94, 3, and I did the whole show selling books. Please learn about commerce, guys. It's not all about design.
Yeah.
Please, it's commerce that got me in. It's the accounting that got me in. Doing the books, the line sheets, and then doing the show. And in those days, the shows were everyone's hands-on. We're getting everybody ready. Naomi, Kate, everybody. Yasmin, good. So one was Zim and Jay Jagger in that show. Everybody was in it. Not Jay Jagger, sorry. Jerry Hall was in the show. It was the biggest supermodel show, and it was at the Louvre. I was backstage, and I was still probably about 23, 24 years old. And I just actually said the words to myself. I said, didn't do too bad for a girl from Bradford. And I kind of did a toast to myself.
Yeah.
But that was the first. And there was many, many afterwards, but I don't think they've ended.
Yeah.
And that's what
and
I
that's a
believe.
good point to make. There's more to happen in the future.
There's more to come.
Just being conscious of time, this is going to be my closing question to you all. Through your own experiences, your lived experiences, what does the future of fashion look like, or what would you want it to look like? Anyone?
In relevance to race?
Just to you, from your own personal experience, through your own critical lens, what do you want the future of fashion to look like, or what do you expect it to look like? So Asiya, I'll let you go first.
So I think we've been, I think we've been through a really dull part for a few years.
Yeah.
I always talk, please don't bring up the naughty. So at the most ugliest time in fashion, a lot of it. And then we had a recession in the middle of it, and it was really, really not great. And thank God streetwear really boomed after that. But I see I think now, thank God, yes, we've seen a great show by John with Margella, but it resonates with so much from the past. It's not a new thing, what you've just seen, guys. That is just because there's been such a bad time in between. So I see great leaps and beautiful things arriving. Yeah, I just think AI, I'm very fascinated with it. And I think learn things that you wouldn't normally think about learning because of that. Because AI isn't here to kill you all. It's here to work with you and learn things. Learn, English literature, English language. If you're good at it at school, keep it going, because that AI machine needs words.
And how about in the context of race? Because you mentioned race. What do you see for luxury and couture fashion? Looking at it from a race perspective.
I've never ever felt race problems when I've worked. Can I just say, in the industry, I felt them other places, definitely. Not in the industry of couture. I only think it gets better. I do think it gets better, and I think it's wonderful to see incredibly brilliance being recognised in conglomerates.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think what I'm sort of most excited about, I would say, it's, a lot of the people in this room, the youth. We look to the youth. When I work with the design team, we're looking for the trends. We're always looking at the youth. So what do the youth actually want to do? What are their ideas? And I feel like a lot of young people don't necessarily understand the importance of what they think is cool, the importance of that, and what that can mean down the line.
Because at the end of the day, it's a spreadsheet that matters. And the youth matter because 5-year plan, they matter, because they've got the disposable income.
Exactly.
So it is about numbers, guys, as well.
Absolutely.
Not just the design.
Not just the design.
Making designs that work and sell.
You've got to sell.
Yeah.
There's no point. There's so many designers, I've worked with Lacroix, it doesn't exist anymore.
Great
I think
point.
there's also just opportunity for people's ideas to come to life, and if you look at a brand like Cortez, the streetwear brand, it's the authenticity which is exciting for me. One of the reasons that Japanese fashion has been so revered is because they do things so authentically that it's undeniable. People go to them for that. Look at Hiroki Nakamura and Vizra, he's got a store in Nakamega in Tokyo that has like 3 things in it. And it's like, how is that impossible? Because he believes in what he's doing so well, his interpretation of Western culture, how he sees Americana through Japanese lens. It's so authentic, and I think now more than ever, people have the platform. I mentioned Cortez and how it's so true to its core. I think authenticity is really key. Obviously, going back to what we talked about with Virgil and all that stuff, it's like that came from a very authentic place. It took a while, but it's validated at the very end, and that's just the platform now to then go further, where it doesn't have to then be validated 30 years later. You can start it now because you have platforms. The world's so connected. So I'm most excited about just what we're going to see from the authenticity that's going to come through.
And Amani, last question, just before Sharon, just before we close, just the future of fashion. What do you see? What would you expect it look like? What are you hoping for?
Just more consciousness, to be fair.
Consciousness. Yeah,
whether
great.
it's sustainability and whether it's just being conscious of EDI as well, in that just be more mindful and aware. But pretty much they've all covered what needs to be done anyway.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Sharon, just to close.
Okay, just to close, my future is, and it kind of touches on what you were saying about being authentic, and touches on what we've all been saying. It's actually about storytelling and narrative. That's my future. And when we're thinking about AI, it is just a tool.
Of course it is.
It's a tool. And I've been working with a couple of designers, and the thing that's been so exciting is that they've been telling their story using those tools. So you need to remember who's in control of this. It's not in control of you. You're telling it what to do ultimately with your words and your language, which is why storytelling and narrative is so important.
Thank you, great response there. So just to close, everyone, I just want to thank the panel for taking the time to come and attend today and share your experiences and thoughts. So a quick round of applause to everyone for attending. Thanks to Manchester Art Gallery and also Manchester Metropolitan University and Manchester Fashion Institute as well. So thank you all for attending. We do have a talk that's happening at the end of the month, 29th of May. That will be the last talk in the series. That's sexuality and gender. So please do all attend if you're able to. So that's the 29th of May, 4:30 to 6:30. So if you are available to come to that, please do come. But once again, thank you all. There's going to be a small limited window before the museum closes and we all get checked out. I think we've got about 20 minutes. So just going on the advice of the panel, do network. We have got an opportunity for questions as well, I almost forgot. Just before we close, are there any questions from the audience? I'm hoping there is. Oh, yeah, Barbara.
My question is to the panel in relation to funding by the UK government. Are you aware of any specific funding for your particular group, or are you aware of what's available for the government for young fashion designers who come from ethnic backgrounds?
I'm aware that the British Fashion Council, there's an award there that young designers can go through. However, it is just that one small window.
There's a few companies I think have got it, but it's still quite limited. LVMH has one, Burberry's got one. That's for young designers. For us as a collective space, there is more, I suppose, now, but it's still there's still a lot to be said. It's a small drop in funding, you know, and it shouldn't be. That's what
I asked the question because there is specific in the UK funding for protected characteristics, so I will speak to you after.
All right,
so obviously that message hasn't gone out to the panel.
I need to speak to you.
Yeah, she needs to speak about it.
Yeah, no, it is important because I work in this area, so the message isn't getting out. There is support, and it is something that we want to encourage through NFI.
Oh, that's good.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
So we're listening to discussion. So I'm a little bit of pursuit at the moment. And one of the things that has stuck with me is Jessica. She's one of the big bosses, and she is a black woman. And in one of the most recent episodes, she found out she was only picked for her role because she hit the diversity factor for the business. How do you make sure that going forward that someone is valued for their skills and knows that they're appreciated for their worth, not just the way they look or to be a statistic within a business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's kind of looking at tokenism.
Tokenism.
Yeah. Is there anyone on the panel that wants to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm going to respond to it, only because you're going to have tokenism, otherwise you're not going to get a space in that room.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, her storyline, I love Sue's as well. So her storyline is really interesting. But I do think that you're always going to self-reflect and think, how did I get here? And I would love to think that I got here just because of my sheer determination and because I'm a creative thinker and yada yada yada. There's also, I know I'm in particular spaces because I'm black. And if I wasn't black and I wasn't the token person, I wouldn't be here.
In this room.
I wouldn't be here in this room. However, in knowing that, I also know that I have a responsibility so that whenever there is space around me, I will always go out of my way to support other black and brown designers, creatives, academics. That is what's so important. I'm not saying that we talked about this earlier. I'm not saying that I'm looking at their colour or their ethnicity first above all else. However, it is like the golden ticket.
So there's a saying that I'm familiar with, it's about passing the ladder down. So when you're in a place of opportunity to make impactful change, ensure that you're kind of recognising where those gaps are and passing out that hand of support to others who may have a similar lived experience, who may be overlooked or underrepresented, and also passing that opportunity on to them as well.
Yeah. I don't know, we were saying earlier, I've got 3 companies. I don't even think about it because it's natural.
Yeah.
It's there. I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to, where's my EDI policy? I'm doing an event, the room is there, it's qualified, everyone's qualified in that room. But my answer to your question, I also believe, yes, I do hand the ladder down. It's important to support people who, I'm so interested in talking to you afterwards. But you know, you just resonate naturally. However, I'm not taking on anybody just because of that. I'm not employing anybody for that only. They have to be qualified.
I think there's a difference between getting a role and keeping it.
Well, yeah, doing
That's
it.
a good point,
Yeah. So it's like if you are in
Blooming
there, no matter who you are, if you're not performing, that's
But we talked about this. We were talking about this earlier, and I said, well, actually, what we need to also recognise is that very often, if you are from an ethnic minority background, it is the first time. It's not just the first time you've been in that room. You don't know anyone else. No family, no friends that have been in those spaces. So how do you manage yourself? I mean, it's really easy to make terrible mistakes because you don't know how to operate in those spaces. So it's about supporting those people all the way through. It's not just putting them there, but giving them the scaffolding to maintain being in that space.
That's a great point.
Well, I just think it's really interesting with my minoritized students starting university for the first time. I always used to say, do you even know how to shake someone's hand?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just subtle things like that.
Or speaking in a room. You want to crack it in the industry that's one of the hardest industries in the world. You want to crack it in that, talk. I mean, open your mouth, be seen, be heard. You're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you for those points.
Great question, by the way.
Final closing person question? No? Going once, going twice? No? All right, so once again, thank you everyone for coming and listening today. Again, thank you for the panel for joining us as well. There'll be a small opportunity now to network with each other and the panel if you want to ask some questions one-to-one with them as well. As I say, 29th of May is going to be our next event, so please do join us if you can. Thank you.